The rain had been falling since noon. Not the gentle kind that felt poetic or refreshing, but the heavy, relentless kind that soaked shoes through leather and crept down collars no matter how carefully someone dressed. Outside the cafe, umbrellas collided like shields in battle, people rushing past each other with their heads down, focused only on staying dry and on time. Inside, the world was very different. The city cafe glowed with warm light, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, gold-rimmed chandeliers casting soft reflections across glass tables and silverware. The air smelled of roasted espresso, vanilla foam, and money, quiet money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. People here spoke softly, laughed carefully, and wore confidence the way others wore coats. This place was not built for struggle, and certainly not for her. The heavy glass door opened with a muted creak, followed by the small, delicate chime of a bell. A few heads turned. Then more. Then almost everyone noticed. Ava paused just inside the doorway, rainwater dripping from the hem of her jacket onto the marble floor. She leaned heavily on the single crutch tucked beneath her right arm. Her balance wavered for half a second before she steadied herself, jaw tightening as she forced her breathing to slow. Her left pant leg was folded neatly and pinned just above the knee, where her leg used to be. The amputation was still recent enough that the loss felt loud, not just physically, though the dull ache throbbed deep in the stump, but emotionally. Every movement required calculation. Every step came with the fear of falling. Every public space felt like a test she hadn't studied for. The cafe, once filled with the soft soundtrack of spoons clinking and quiet conversation, dimmed into an awkward hush. People looked. Some stared for a second too long before catching themselves. Others glanced quickly, then looked away. Ava felt it all. The curiosity, the discomfort, the silent question no one ever asked out loud anymore. What happened to her? She adjusted her grip on the crutch, fingers white with tension, and took a step forward. Her doctor's voice echoed in her mind, gentle but firm. You can't hide forever, Ava. You have to relearn the world. Sitting, standing, being seen. It's part of healing. She reminded herself why she was here. Not for coffee. Not for luxury. But practice. Just practice being normal again. She scanned the room, heart sinking almost immediately. Every seat was taken. Every plush armchair near the wall. Every bar stool at the counter. Even the tiny metal chairs by the fogged-up windows. People lounged comfortably, coats draped over empty chairs beside them, bags occupying seats that could have helped someone like her. Ava swallowed. Her leg began to throb harder, a warning pulse she'd learned to recognize. She wasn't supposed to stay upright for long. 5 minutes, maybe 10, before the pain became sharp and unforgiving. She took a careful step toward the nearest table. 2 university students sat there, laptops open, coffee cups half empty, headphones over their ears. Excuse me," Ava said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the hum of the cafe's espresso machine. Could I sit here for just a minute?" Neither of them looked up. One of them laughed at something on his screen. The other typed faster. Ava waited, heat creeping up her neck. Nothing. She stepped back, humiliation tightening in her chest like a fist. It's okay, she told herself. They didn't hear you. She moved to another table. An older woman sat alone, purse clutched tightly against her side, a half-eaten pastry on the plate in front of her. An empty chair sat untouched across from her. Ava forced a small smile. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "Could I sit for a moment? I've been standing for a while." The woman's eyes flicked to Ava's crutch, then to the folded pant leg. Her expression hardened. "Oh, no," she said quickly, pulling her purse closer. "Someone is sitting there." The chair remained empty. Ava nodded. Of course, she whispered. She turned away before the woman could see the tears gathering in her eyes. Her chest felt tight now, not just from the physical pain, but from something heavier, something that settled deep in her stomach and made her feel small. Invisible. Standing there swaying slightly, Ava realized something terrifying. No one was going to help her. Not because they were cruel, but because it was easier not to see her at all. Her stump throbbed sharply now, pain blooming with every second she stayed upright. She shifted her weight, breathing shallowly, scanning the room again, desperation creeping in. And that's when she saw him. In the far corner, near the wide glass window streaked with rain, sat a man completely alone at a long, elegant table meant for at least 6 people. A leather briefcase rested neatly beside him. A silver laptop lay open in front of him. On his wrist, a watch that probably cost more than Ava's entire apartment. He didn't look rushed or relaxed. He looked controlled, focused, untouchable. Gabriel Stone. Even people who had never met him knew who he was. Billionaire investor. Media titan. A man who built empires and dismantled them with a phone call. Known for his brilliance and his ice-cold demeanor. No one dared sit at his table, not because there wasn't space, but because his reputation alone created a barrier no one crossed. Ava hesitated. Her instinct screamed no. This was not a man who entertained interruptions. This was not a man who did favors. This was a man who could humiliate her with a single look and feel nothing. But her leg burned now, pain spreading up her body, her balance growing shakier by the second. She had tried everyone else. She had no choice. With trembling fingers, Ava tightened the strap of her worn backpack and took a step toward him. Then another. Each movement felt louder than it should have, the soft rubber tip of her crutch tapping against marble echoing in her ears. Conversations slowed, heads turned, whispers fluttered like nervous birds around the room. A one-legged girl walking toward Gabriel Stone was not something anyone expected to see. Ava felt every eye on her. She stopped at the edge of his table. Her breath caught. "Excuse me," she said, voice cracking despite her effort to stay calm. Gabriel didn't look up. She cleared her throat. "Sir," she continued, softer now, I've been standing for a while. Could I please sit here for just a moment? I just need to rest." For the first time, his fingers paused over the keyboard. Slowly, deliberately, Gabriel Stone lifted his eyes. Their gazes met. Ava felt it like a physical impact. His eyes were sharp, assessing, dark with something unreadable, surprise perhaps, or irritation. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The cafe held its breath. A waiter froze mid-step. A barista leaned forward behind the counter. Even the students removed one headphone each. A billionaire. A girl with one leg. One simple request. Ava gripped her crutch harder, bracing herself. She had heard stories. How he didn't tolerate inconvenience. How he despised weakness. How he once fired an executive for spilling coffee during a meeting. Her chest tightened as she waited for the rejection. The dismissal. The humiliation. Gabriel closed his laptop. The soft click echoed far louder than it should have. He straightened in his chair. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm, cold, perfectly measured. "No." The word landed like a slap. Ava flinched. "I don't share my table." A murmur rippled through the cafe. Ava's face burned. She began, then stopped. Her throat closed around the rest of the sentence. Gabriel's gaze lingered on her folded pant leg for half a second longer than necessary. Then he added flatly, "You'll need to find somewhere else." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Crushing. Ava nodded slowly, her lips pressed together as she fought the tears threatening to spill. She turned away, her balance wavering as the pain surged, humiliation crashing over her in waves. But just as she took her first step back, Gabriel stood up. The chair scraped softly against the floor. The cafe gasped as one. Ava froze. Gabriel moved around the table, pulled out a chair, and placed it gently behind her. "Sit," he said. Her heart pounded. Confusion rippled through the room. What he said next, what he did next, would shatter every assumption anyone had ever made about him. And it would mark the beginning of a night that would change Ava's life forever. If you were standing right here, seeing everything unfold, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading all of them. And before we continue, please consider subscribing. I poured my heart into crafting this story for you, and your support truly keeps this channel alive. Ava didn't sit right away. The chair behind her felt unreal, like it might disappear if she trusted it. Her fingers trembled on the handle of her crutch as she looked at Gabriel Stone, still standing beside the table, his expression unreadable. "You said you needed to rest," he said evenly. "Sit." There was no kindness in his tone, but there was no cruelty either. Just certainty. Slowly, Ava lowered herself into the chair, every muscle in her body tense as she eased her weight down. The moment she sat, relief flooded her so intensely it almost made her dizzy. The burning pain in her stump softened to a dull ache. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The cafe remained silent. Gabriel returned to his seat across from her, not directly opposite but diagonal, giving her space without making a show of it. He reopened his laptop, eyes back on the screen as though nothing unusual had happened. As though he hadn't just reversed a public humiliation in front of an entire room. Ava sat there, unsure what to do with her hands, unsure whether to speak, unsure whether this was a trap, whether at any moment he would decide she had overstayed her welcome. Minutes passed. No one moved. Eventually, the cafe returned to life in cautious fragments, soft whispers, careful glances, conversations resuming in hushed tones. Ava stared at the rain sliding down the window beside them. Her reflection stared back at her, paler than she remembered. Thinner, older. She hadn't always looked like this. Before the accident, Ava's life had been loud in a different way. She had been the kind of person people described as always moving, always late, always juggling too much and somehow smiling through it. She grew up in a small apartment above a tailor's shop on the edge of the city, raised by a single mother who stitched dresses by hand and hummed old songs while she worked. Money was always tight, but love was. Her mother used to say, "We don't have much, Ava, but we have each other. That's enough." For a long time it was. Ava had dreams then, big ones. She wanted to be an architect, someone who designed spaces where people felt safe, seen, and welcome. She loved buildings, loved how they stood strong despite weather, despite time. Loved the idea of creating something permanent in a world that constantly shifted. She worked 2 jobs through college. Waitressing by night, tutoring by morning, sleeping when she could, graduating with honors and exhaustion wrapped tightly together. The day she got her first internship offer, she ran home in the rain, laughing, breathless, calling her mother's name as she burst through the door. Her mother hugged her and cried. That was the last truly uncomplicated joy Ava remembered. The accident came 6 months later. A drunk driver ran a red light. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Ava woke up to the smell of antiseptic and the sound of machines breathing for her. The doctor's face had been gentle, too gentle. "I'm so sorry," he said. "We did everything we could." She didn't understand at first. Then she looked down, and everything changed. The pain that followed wasn't just physical. It was grief. She grieved her leg like a person, like someone who had died suddenly and unfairly. She grieved the future she had pictured so clearly, the buildings she would never design, the stairs she would never climb without thinking. Rehab was brutal. Learning to sit without tipping, to stand without panic, to walk without trusting something that wasn't really there. The phantom pain was the worst, nerves screaming from a limb that no longer existed, as if her body itself was confused, angry, refusing to accept reality. Her internship offer was quietly withdrawn. "We need someone more mobile," they said. Her savings vanished into medical bills. Her mother took on more work to help, hands cracking and bleeding from constant stitching. Ava watched guilt carve deep lines into her mother's face. She applied for dozens of jobs, then hundreds. Each rejection felt heavier than the last. Some didn't even bother replying. Others offered sympathy with their refusal, which somehow hurt more. Eventually, she took what she could get. A receptionist job. Part-time. No benefits. No room to sit for long. Her doctor said she needed to practice being in public again. So she came to the cafe. Back in the present, Ava blinked hard, forcing the memories down before they spilled over. She hadn't meant to think about any of that. She hadn't meant to sit across from one of the richest men in the city and feel this exposed. Gabriel glanced up from his laptop. "Are you all right?" he asked. The question surprised her. She nodded quickly. "Yes, thank you, I won't stay long." He studied her for a moment, then nodded once and returned to his screen. A waiter approached cautiously. "Sir, would you like anything else?" he asked Gabriel. Gabriel closed his laptop again. "No," he said, then after a pause, "but she will." The waiter turned to Ava, startled. "What would you like, miss?" Ava hesitated. I didn't plan to order anything." Gabriel's voice cut in, firm but not unkind. "You're already here." The waiter waited. Ava swallowed. "Just tea, please." As the waiter left, Ava stared at the table. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to bother you." Gabriel leaned back slightly. "You didn't," he replied. She looked up, surprised. He didn't elaborate. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Not hostile. Not humiliating. Just quiet. For the first time since the accident, Ava realized something unsettling. No one had asked her why she needed the seat. No one had asked what happened. No one had tried to fix her. And somehow, that restraint felt like respect. But beneath the calm surface of the cafe, something had shifted. Eyes lingered. Whispers grew bolder. And somewhere between the rain-soaked windows and the untouched coffee cups, Ava felt it. This moment, this strange kindness wrapped in cold edges, was only the beginning. And it was already pulling her toward something she couldn't yet see. The morning alarm rang at 5:12 a.m. Ava didn't wake up immediately. She lay still for several seconds, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment as the sound drilled into her skull. The ceiling had a thin crack running diagonally from one corner to the other. She had counted the inches so many times she knew exactly where it ended. She reached out and silenced the alarm. Then she exhaled. Mornings were the hardest. Not because of the pain, though that was always there, but because for a few seconds after waking she forgot. Forgot the weight imbalance. Forgot the missing limb. Forgot the calculation required just to exist. Then she tried to move. Her body shifted, and the absence screamed back into her awareness. The phantom sensation flared, a sharp, electric pain shooting through nerves that led nowhere. Ava clenched her teeth until it passed. Okay, she whispered to herself. Okay. She swung her remaining leg off the bed carefully, reached for her crutch and pushed herself upright. The movement was slow, deliberate. Any rush meant falling, and falling meant bruises, broken skin, and weeks of setback. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Her mother used to wake before her, humming as she made tea, the radio playing softly in the background. Now the apartment held only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Her mother slept in the other room, already exhausted before the day even began. Ava washed up in the bathroom sink, splashing cold water on her face. The mirror reflected someone she barely recognized, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders constantly tense, a body always bracing for impact. She dressed in her receptionist uniform, a plain blouse, slacks altered at the knee. She hated the pin, hated how it drew attention, but tailoring cost money she didn't have. In the kitchen, her mother sat at the table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. "You're up early," her mother said, forcing a smile. "Always," Ava replied gently. Her mother's eyes flicked to the crutch. "Your leg okay today?" Ava nodded. "It's manageable." They both knew what that meant. Her mother reached across the table, squeezing Ava's hand. "I'll be home late tonight," she said. "Big order." Ava nodded again. "I'll make dinner." Her mother hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know," Ava interrupted softly, "but I want to." They shared a look filled with unspoken guilt and love. Then Ava grabbed her bag and headed out. The commute was its own battle. Buses were crowded. Drivers impatient. People sighed loudly when she took too long to board. One man muttered, "They should have special transport for this." She pretended not to hear. At work, the receptionist desk was too high for comfort and too low for balance. The stool offered no back support. Sitting too long hurt. Standing too long hurt. There was no winning. Her manager, Carla, passed by mid-morning. "You're late by 2 minutes," she said sharply. "I'm sorry," Ava replied. "The bus." "Everyone takes the bus," Carla snapped. "Be more careful." Ava nodded. Customers came and went, barely acknowledging her. Some stared at her leg openly. Others spoke loudly, slowly, as if disability affected hearing. One woman leaned over the desk. "Can you even stand long enough to do this job?" Ava smiled tightly. "Yes, ma'am." Lunch break was 15 minutes. She spent most of it sitting in the bathroom stall, massaging her thigh, fighting tears. By the end of the shift, her body felt like it had been wrung dry. Still, she smiled. Still, she thanked customers. Still, she apologized when people bumped into her crutch. Because losing this job wasn't an option. At home, she collapsed onto the couch. The pain surged. She stared at the wall, wondering how long she could keep doing this. Wondering how long before something broke. The cafe incident replayed in her mind. Gabriel Stone's voice. The chair. The silence. For the first time in months, Ava wondered if the world hadn't entirely given up on her. But hope was dangerous. And tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. 3 days after the cafe incident, Ava thought she had imagined it. Not the humiliation. Not the chair. But the strange calm that followed. Life had a way of snapping back to reality when hope lingered too long. It was late afternoon when it happened. The cafe, the same cafe, buzzed louder than usual. A private event had just ended, leaving behind half-drunk cups, wrinkled napkins, and the kind of crowd that stayed longer than they paid for. Ava hadn't planned to come back. But her physical therapist had insisted. "You don't heal by retreating," she'd said. "You heal by returning." So Ava returned. This time she didn't come alone. She came with her manager. Carla had suggested the cafe as a meeting place to discuss Ava's future with the company. That phrase alone had tied Ava's stomach into knots. They sat near the entrance, Carla upright and polished, Ava slightly angled, carefully balancing herself. Carla tapped her phone impatiently. "You understand," she said without looking up, "that your performance has been complicated lately." Ava nodded. "I'm doing my best." "I know," Carla replied, voice thin, "but best doesn't always meet standards." Before Ava could respond, the door opened. The bell chimed, and every muscle in Ava's body went rigid. Gabriel Stone stepped inside. The room reacted instantly. Chairs shifted. Voices lowered. Eyes followed him like gravity. He wore a dark coat, rain-speckled, his presence commanding without effort. Carla straightened immediately. "Oh my God," she whispered, "that's him." Ava said nothing. Gabriel walked past them without looking in their direction and took his usual corner table. Carla's expression changed. An idea sparked behind her eyes. "This is perfect," she murmured. Ava frowned. "What is?" Carla stood abruptly, smoothing her blazer. "Watch and learn," she said. Before Ava could stop her, Carla marched across the cafe. Ava's chest tightened. She watched as Carla approached Gabriel, her posture overly friendly, her smile stretched thin. "Mr. Stone," Carla said brightly, "I don't know if you remember me, Carla Whitmore." Gabriel glanced up, expression neutral. "I don't." Carla laughed awkwardly. "Of course. I manage a front office downtown. We had a brief correspondence last year." Gabriel nodded once, clearly uninterested. Carla gestured behind her, toward Ava. "I'm actually here with one of my employees," she continued. "The young woman you helped the other day." Gabriel's eyes flicked toward Ava. "Just briefly." Ava's stomach dropped. "I thought it was so generous of you," Carla said. "Though, to be honest, it's caused a bit of disruption." Gabriel raised an eyebrow. "How so?" Carla lowered her voice, but not enough. "Ever since that incident, she's been expecting special treatment," Carla said, smiling apologetically. "Extra breaks, flexibility, it's becoming difficult." Ava's ears rang. "That wasn't true." Gabriel's gaze sharpened. "Is that so?" he asked. Carla nodded. "I run a business, I can't afford exceptions." Ava stood, or tried to. Pain shot through her leg as she pushed herself up, heart racing. "That's not," she began. Carla turned sharply. "Ava," she snapped, "sit down, you're embarrassing yourself." The cafe went silent. Every head turned. Ava froze. Her face burned hotter than it had that day in the rain. "I don't ask for special treatment," Ava said, voice shaking but loud enough to be heard. "I ask for fairness." Carla scoffed. "Fairness?" she laughed. "You're lucky to be employed at all." The words sliced deep. Gabriel stood. Slowly. The movement drew gasps. Carla's smile faltered. "I think," Gabriel said calmly, "you're confusing fairness with convenience." Carla stiffened. "Excuse me." "You've publicly misrepresented your employee," he continued, "and used her disability as leverage." A murmur rippled through the cafe. Carla flushed. "With all due respect, Mr. Stone, this is an internal matter." Gabriel looked at Ava. Then back at Carla. "No," he said, "it is." Ava's knees trembled. She expected relief. Instead, fear crept in. Because when powerful people intervened, consequences followed. And not always in the right direction. Carla's eyes hardened. "We'll discuss this later," she said to Ava through clenched teeth. "At work." The threat hung heavy in the air. Gabriel watched her walk away, then turned back to Ava. "You shouldn't have to endure that," he said quietly. Ava swallowed. "Thank you," she whispered, "but I think I just made things worse." And she was right, because Carla wasn't done. Not even close. The email arrived at 6:03 a.m. Ava saw it before she even sat up in bed. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand, the screen lighting up the dark room. She stared at the subject line for a long moment before opening it. Mandatory Performance Review 9:00 a.m. No greeting. No explanation. Just a calendar invite. Her stomach dropped. She lay back against the pillow, eyes fixed on the ceiling crack, feeling the familiar weight of dread settle in her chest. This wasn't routine. This wasn't standard. This was punishment. Her mother stirred in the next room, coughing softly. Ava sat up slowly, careful not to trigger the ache already pulsing in her leg. In the kitchen, she made tea instead of coffee. Her hands shook too much for caffeine. Her mother noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked. Ava hesitated, then handed her the phone. Her mother read the email, lips pressing into a thin line. "They can't fire you for that," she said quickly. "That woman humiliated you." Ava forced a small smile. "They can fire me for anything." Her mother reached for her hand. "We'll figure it out." But Ava could hear the fear beneath the reassurance. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Medical bills still lingered. Her mother's hands already ached from overwork. There was no safety net. At the office, the atmosphere felt different. Heavier. Coworkers avoided her eyes. One whispered, "I heard Carla's furious." Another muttered, "She shouldn't have embarrassed management like that." Ava kept her head down, heart pounding with every step. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Carla called her into the glass-walled conference room. 2 HR representatives sat inside. Ava's mouth went dry. Carla didn't invite her to sit. "Ava," Carla said, arms crossed, "this is a formal review regarding your conduct." "My conduct?" Ava asked quietly. "Yes," Carla replied. "Your public behavior with a high-profile individual reflected poorly on the company." Ava stared at her. "I didn't do anything." Carla slid a paper across the table. "Customer complaints," she said. "Allegations of preferential treatment, disruption of workflow." Ava's hands trembled as she read. None of it was true. "This is retaliation," Ava said softly, "because I spoke up." Carla's smile was thin. "You should be grateful anyone employs you." The HR reps exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing. Carla leaned closer. "We're placing you on probation," she continued. "One more incident and you're done." Ava swallowed hard. "What about accommodations?" Carla's eyes hardened. "We're not obligated to coddle you." The meeting ended just like that. No discussion. No defense. Ava returned to her desk feeling hollow. At lunch, she sat alone. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You embarrass me. Fix it, or you won't like what comes next." Her breath caught. She knew exactly who it was from. The rest of the day crawled. Every step hurt. Every glance felt judgmental. By the time she got home, her legs screamed in protest. Her mother was waiting. "They called," her mother said quietly. "Your manager." Ava froze. "She said your job might not last," her mother continued. "She implied you were difficult." The guilt crushed Ava. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her mother pulled her into a careful hug. "None of this is your fault." But Ava wasn't sure anymore. That night she lay awake, staring into darkness. Then another message buzzed onto her phone. "You think one billionaire changes your place? Remember who signs your paycheck." Ava turned the phone face down. Tears slid silently into her pillow. She had stood up once, and now everything she loved was on the line. But somewhere deep inside her, something else stirred. A quiet, dangerous resolve. The invitation arrived the next evening. Not by email. By courier. A thick cream envelope slipped under the apartment door, its edges pristine, the paper heavy enough to feel expensive before it was even opened. Ava stared at it for a long moment, her heart beat loud in her ears. Her name was handwritten on the front. Not printed. Handwritten. Inside was a single card. City Redevelopment Forum, private session attendance requested. At the bottom, a name. Gabriel Stone. Ava sank onto the couch, the envelope trembling in her hands. Her first instinct was panic. She reread the card 3 times, searching for hidden meaning, for conditions, for traps, but there was nothing else. No address, only a time and the venue she recognized immediately. The same office complex where her company leased space. Her mother watched her from the doorway. "What is it?" she asked. Ava held up the card. Her mother's eyes widened. "Is that real?" "I don't know," Ava whispered, "but I think I have to go." The forum was not open to the public. It was invitation only. Developers, investors, city officials, people who shaped skylines from boardrooms. Ava had no business being there. Except she did. She dressed carefully that evening, choosing clothes that made her feel steady, not invisible. She practiced walking across the living room again and again until her balance felt reliable. At the venue, security hesitated when they saw her crutch. Then they checked the list and stepped aside. The room was vast, all glass and steel, overlooking the city lights. Conversations buzzed with confidence and money. Ava felt her throat tighten as she moved toward the back, intending to observe quietly and leave. But Gabriel saw her immediately. He crossed the room with purposeful steps. "You came," he said. "I wasn't sure why you asked," Ava replied honestly. He gestured toward the stage. "Because I heard you speak." Ava frowned. "When?" "In the cafe," he said. "You said you didn't ask for special treatment, you asked for fairness." She blinked, surprised. "Most people don't know the difference," he continued. "You did." The forum began. Speaker after speaker presented glossy designs for redevelopment, towers with sweeping stairs, glass facades, rooftop gardens. Ava watched in silence, and with every presentation her chest tightened. None of them accounted for accessibility. None of them considered people like her. Then Gabriel stood. "I'd like to hear another perspective," he said, "from someone who lives with the consequences of these designs." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Gabriel turned to Ava. "Would you?" The room fell silent. Ava's pulse thundered. She hadn't prepared. She hadn't rehearsed. But she had lived it. Slowly she moved to the stage. Every step echoed. She faced the crowd. "I lost my leg in an accident," she began, "but I lost my independence because of design." She spoke about stairs without ramps, doors too heavy, spaces that assumed everyone moved the same. She described pain, embarrassment, being invisible. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. The room listened, really listened. By the time she finished, silence filled the space. Then applause. Not polite. Real. Gabriel watched her with something new in his eyes. Respect. And somewhere in the crowd, Carla stared frozen. Because Ava hadn't just spoken. She had changed the conversation. The applause hadn't even finished echoing when Carla made her move. By the next morning, Ava's name was everywhere in the office. Not in praise. In whispers. In accusations. In carefully worded emails sent accidentally to the wrong distribution lists. Ava arrived at work to find her access card blinking red. She tried again. Red. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. They told me to escort you upstairs. Her stomach dropped. In the conference room, Carla sat waiting, with two different HR representatives this time. A thick folder lay open on the table. Carla didn't bother with pleasantries. You violated company policy, she said coldly. Ava blinked. How? By representing yourself as a consultant, Carla replied. By using company time and reputation to speak at a private forum. I didn't represent the company, Ava said. I spoke as myself. Carla slid a document across the table. Multiple witnesses say otherwise. Ava scanned the page. False statements. Fabricated claims. Signatures she didn't recognize. This isn't true, Ava whispered. Carla leaned forward. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed this company, and now you'll pay for it. Ava felt dizzy. HR cleared their throat. We're suspending you pending investigation. Suspension meant no pay. No timeline. No protection. When Ava got home, police were waiting. A neighbor stared. Her mother clutched her chest. They questioned Ava about alleged fraud. Misrepresentation. Conflict of interest. Ava's world tilted. She hadn't done anything wrong. But truth felt fragile in the face of power. As the officers left, one of them whispered, "Get a lawyer." Ava sat on the couch, shaking. Her phone buzzed. A single message. You should have stayed in your place. Carla had crossed a line. And now Ava stood on the edge of losing everything. Ava didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch, fully dressed, staring at the dark ceiling while her phone sat face down on the coffee table like a threat. Every creak of the apartment made her flinch. Every distant siren sent her heart racing. Her mother sat at the small kitchen table, pretending to read, though she hadn't turned a page in over an hour. We'll fight this, her mother said softly, not looking up. We always do. Ava wanted to believe her. But she had seen how power worked. How easily truth could be buried beneath signatures and letterheads. At 8:17 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Not loud. Measured. Professional. Ava pushed herself up carefully and opened it. A man in a tailored gray suit stood in the hallway, silver hair neatly combed, posture straight despite his age. He held a leather portfolio under one arm. Good morning, he said. I'm looking for Ava Reynolds. Yes, Ava said cautiously. He smiled gently. My name is Henry Caldwell. I believe we need to talk. They sat at the kitchen table. Henry placed the portfolio down and opened it, revealing documents, photographs, timestamps, and transcripts. I've been following your situation, he said calmly, at Mr. Stone's request. Ava's breath caught. Gabriel Stone. Henry nodded. He doesn't intervene lightly, but when he does so thoroughly. Henry explained everything. The forum. The surveillance footage from the cafe. Emails Carla didn't know had been archived. Internal memos. Messages. A timeline that showed clear retaliation. You weren't suspended for misconduct, Henry said. You were targeted for being visible. Ava's eyes burned. Why are you helping me? She asked. Henry met her gaze. Because I was you 30 years ago. He told her about his own past, how he'd been silenced, accused, nearly ruined, until one person with power chose integrity over convenience. Now it's my turn, he said. That afternoon, Henry accompanied Ava to a formal hearing. Carla sat rigid, confidence cracking. As evidence unfolded, the room shifted. Emails contradicted her claims. Witnesses hesitated. The truth rose. By the end, Carla was pale. This wasn't just defense. This was exposure. And outside the room, cameras waited. Because once truth meets daylight, it doesn't stay quiet. The hearing room was too small for what was about to happen. By the time Ava arrived the following morning, the hallway outside was already crowded, lawyers murmuring into phones, journalists pretending not to stare, and coworkers who suddenly remembered her name. Carla sat at the long table, posture rigid, lips pressed tight. The confidence she once wore like armor had cracked. She kept checking her phone, as if waiting for a lifeline that wasn't coming. Ava took her seat beside Henry Caldwell. Her hands trembled, but this time it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. The panel chair cleared her throat. We will now review the evidence submitted. Screens lit up. Emails appeared, Carla's words time-stamped, unedited. Make it clear she's a liability. We can frame this as misconduct. If she thinks one speech makes her untouchable, she's wrong. A murmur swept the room. Carla's face drained of color. Witnesses were called. One by one, co-workers admitted the pressure they'd faced to lie. One admitted he'd been promised a promotion for signing a false statement. Carla's lawyer tried to object. The panel overruled him. Then came the surveillance footage. The café. The confrontation. Carla's words echoing clearly. You're lucky to be employed at all. Ava closed her eyes briefly. Not to hide, but to breathe. When the footage ended, the silence was deafening. The panel chair leaned forward. Ms. Whitmore, she said evenly, do you have anything to add? Carla stood abruptly. This is a misunderstanding, she said sharply. She manipulated him. She used her condition to gain influence. Ava felt the sting, but it didn't land the same way anymore. Henry stood. With respect, he said calmly, the only manipulation here was abuse of authority. The ruling came swiftly. Termination. Formal censure. Referral for further investigation. Carla slumped into her chair. Outside, reporters swarmed. The headline spread within hours. Manager exposed for retaliation against disabled employee. By evening, Carla's professional reputation lay in ruins. Ava stood at the window of her apartment, city lights blinking like distant stars. For the first time since the accident, justice had spoken. The week after Carla's downfall was surreal. The office that once felt like a battlefield suddenly seemed small, hollow, empty of tension. Ava walked in, her crutch tapping lightly on the polished floors, and coworkers stepped aside, not in fear but in admiration. Whispers of she won and finally followed her like a soft halo. Gabriel Stone sent another invitation. Not a summons this time. An offer. He met her at the rooftop cafe of his office building, a view that stretched for miles over the city's skyline, glass and steel glittering in the sunlight. Rain had washed the streets below, leaving reflections that danced like silver ribbons. You made an impression, he said, voice calm, eyes sharp. Not just at the forum, everywhere. People noticed. And more importantly, you changed the conversation. Ava blinked. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, he replied. I have a proposition. I want you on my redevelopment advisory team. Full-time, paid, benefits, influence, authority, and yes, accommodations. Her heart hammered. Influence. Authority. She had dreamt of spaces where people like her could move freely. She had dreamt of creating environments that were inclusive, accessible, and dignified. And now, someone with the power to make it real was giving her the chance. I don't know if I'm qualified, Ava said quietly. She trailed off, overwhelmed. Gabriel's eyes softened slightly. You've lived it. That counts for more than experience alone. The weight of his words settled over her like sunlight. That afternoon, she accepted the offer. By the next month, Ava's life had transformed in ways she had only imagined in fragments of hope. Her mother was able to reduce hours at the tailoring shop, thanks to Ava's new income. She finally scheduled that long-awaited surgery for her chronic wrist pain. For the first time in months, the apartment smelled like home, not worry. At work, Ava found herself shaping projects in ways that mattered. Ramps became standard, not optional. Doors became lighter. Staircases incorporated handrails at multiple heights. Elevators were re-evaluated for accessibility. Each blueprint carried a whisper of her story, a story of struggle, courage, and the refusal to be invisible. The media coverage followed. A feature in the city paper highlighted Ava's unique expertise and her personal journey. People began reaching out, students with disabilities, young architects, advocates, seeking mentorship, guidance, hope. Gabriel noticed it all. One evening, as they walked across a newly designed plaza together, he said, "You're not just changing the city, you're changing perceptions. That's harder than buildings." Ava smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "I never imagined it would be like this." "Neither did I," he admitted, a hint of rare humility in his voice. The bond between them grew, not romantic, not yet, but a quiet, mutual respect. Two people who had seen power wielded differently, now connected by empathy and vision. Her old life, the humiliation, the sleepless nights, the constant fear, felt distant, but the lessons remained. Ava was stronger, her mother healthier, her future open. One day, a young woman approached Ava at a public lecture she gave on accessibility in urban planning. "Thank you," she said, eyes bright with tears. "I thought I'd never be seen." Ava felt a familiar ache in her chest, but this time it was soft, almost sweet. She reached out, gently holding the girl's hand. "You are seen," she said, "and you always will be." Ava realized that her struggle wasn't just about survival. It was about making sure no one else felt invisible. At home, she unpacked her first professional project folder. Blueprints of a community center, designed from the perspective of those who had long been overlooked. She traced her finger over each line. The buildings would be strong, inclusive, brave. Just like her. 6 months had passed since Ava had first accepted Gabriel Stone's offer. Her apartment, once cramped and tense, now felt alive. Plants filled the windowsills, and the aroma of freshly brewed tea greeted her every morning. Her mother no longer worked double shifts. She now spent her time designing intricate patterns for bespoke dresses that sold quickly online, her hands finally free from constant strain. Ava herself had grown in ways she hadn't anticipated. She no longer felt like the girl defined by absence and struggle. She was the woman who shaped spaces for others, who had transformed her pain into purpose. At the redevelopment office, her influence was evident. Public spaces once inaccessible now included ramps, wider doors, tactile guides, and safe seating. She had become a sought-after voice for inclusion, a living reminder of why empathy mattered in design and leadership. Gabriel Stone watched quietly from a distance during one city planning session. He had seen countless brilliant minds, but Ava's insight was different. It came from lived experience, tempered by courage and compassion. She wasn't just solving problems, she was changing lives. Carla Whitmore's downfall continued to reverberate. She had left the company under forced termination, her reputation tarnished publicly by investigative journalism following the HR hearings. Job offers were scarce. No one trusted someone who had orchestrated retaliation so blatantly. Her arrogance had blinded her, and the world had finally caught up. One evening, Ava attended a city award ceremony for architects and urban planners. She was recognized for a groundbreaking project, the Accessible Community Hub, a space designed entirely through the lens of those often overlooked, disabled individuals, elderly citizens, and children in underserved neighborhoods. When she accepted the award, she glanced at the audience and spotted her mother beaming with pride. Her mother's hands, once cracked from endless work, now rested lightly on the podium's edge, steady and strong. Gabriel Stone, seated in the front row, applauded quietly. Their eyes met and he gave a subtle nod. No words were needed. This was her moment. She had not only survived, she had thrived. Later that night, Ava returned to the cafe where it had all begun. The rain pattered softly against the window. She remembered the first time she had walked in on her crutch, hesitant, vulnerable, invisible to everyone but Gabriel. A young girl was sitting at the same corner table now, eyes wide as she stared at the menu. The staff gave her a warm smile as she struggled to pull out a chair. Ava approached quietly. "Need some help?" she asked gently. The girl nodded shyly. As Ava guided her to the seat, she realized something. This cycle of empathy, kindness, and courage had come full circle. She had been seen, she had been lifted, and now she had the power to lift others. The city itself seemed transformed, not just by buildings and ramps, but by the invisible architecture of compassion Ava had helped construct. And somewhere in the distance, a former adversary, humbled and forgotten, served as a silent reminder that cruelty never truly triumphs, truth and kindness endure. Ava closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of coffee, rain, and possibility. She had lost a leg, but she had gained her life. Her heart swelled with gratitude, not just for what she had survived, but for what she had created: hope, justice, and a future where no one would feel invisible again. What life lesson will you personally take from this story? Share it with the community.